This is Julian speaking, welcoming you to another battle report out of the breach. Hey, what's this? A new intro? Let's go! The lovely folks at Goblin King Games have sent me a Moonstone starter set a while ago, and what can I say, I'm really in love with the miniatures and the game. I am very excited to invite you all on my journeys through the Lands of Tauber. I hope you will join me in my travels. A few things in beforehand. I will explain some rules here and there to give you all a good feeling for the rules and the flow of the game. If you want to have a closer look at the rules or a more step-by-step tutorial, let me know and I see what I can do. But there are awesome how to play videos out there, for example from T&G Productions or Bier und Brezel Tabletop for my German viewers. If you haven't seen them already, I'll link them in the video description down below. Check them out, they are definitely worth your time. And as always, the games you find here are friendly and casually played. We are still new to Moonstone and here for the fun in gaming and the love for miniatures. If you find rules mistakes or you have any tips and tricks, let me know in the comments down below. I always enjoy a helpful and friendly discussion. For all things Moonstone, check out the links in the video description down below and consider joining the Discord. Friendly and welcoming people all over the place. A wonderful community. And now, without further ado, let's start our journey and harvest some Moonstones. For our first game on camera, we decide to play with just 4 models each and fight over 5 Moonstones. The one holding more Moonstones at the end of turn 4 is the winner. I bring the humans from the starter set as my troop and fight for the Commonwealth. With the Baron von Fancy Hat, Eric the Squire, Flintlock, and Friar Flavius. Bernd brings some cultists as his troop and fights for the Leshavult, with Lubard, Gwendoline, Reagan, and Klaus. Here you can see the depth of the Moonstones on the battlefield. The Leshavult won the first roll-off and had chosen to be the early bird to pick the side, and therefore the Commonwealth have the initiative. In turn 1. The Commonwealth take the first activation and Friar Flavius uses the free jog action to move 4 inches and in base contact with the Moonstone in front of him. Then he uses the harvest action twice, spends 2 energy to reduce the depth of the Moonstone from 3 to 1. With his last energy he takes the step action to move 1 inch. Lubard jogs also in base contact with the Moonstone in front of him and spends 2 energy to harvest twice and reduces the depth from 4 to 2. Eric activates, spends 2 energy to use My Hero on Flintlock and Flintlock gains 1 energy. He then jogs and steps for 1 energy to get in base contact with the Moonstone. Reagan jogs to get behind the crates in cover from Flintlock's deadly musket. She spends 2 energy to use her ability Verdant Growth. She has an arcane stat of 5, so she can draw 5 cards from the arcane deck, and because the ability does not target an enemy model, the player to the left, that's me, is considered to be the defender and draws 6 cards. She has to look for any green card because the number just determines how far away the wooded patch can be placed. Bernd declares a green 3, and I have to choose if I believe him or if I think he's bluffing. There are a few outcomes quickly mentioned for all of you who haven't played Moonstone before. If I think my opponent is telling the truth, the effect of the ability takes place and all arcane cards are getting shuffled back into the deck without revealing the card. But I also can call a bluff and the card is revealed. If my opponent was telling the truth, the effect of the ability takes place and another card from his hand can be declared without spending extra energy. If my opponent was bluffing, I can replace the card with one of mine, ideally a catastrophe, to trigger the catastrophe effect listed in the ability. Back to the game. I believe Bernd is telling the truth, and Reagan can place a wooded patch within 4x, so within 9 inches, and she chooses to give Lubart some cover. Then she keeps her last energy and ends her turn. Flintlock jogs in base contact with the Moonstone and spends 1 energy to harvest, can reduce the depth to 0 and can pick up the Moonstone, placing it on his card. Then he spends 1 energy to step to the right to get a line of sight to Lubart, spends another energy for his Take Aim ability to increase his arcane stat by 1, and spends his last energy to shoot his musket. He has an arcane stat of 3, plus 1 for Take Aim, plus 2 from the evade stat of Lubart, and minus 2 because Lubart is in heavy cover from the wooded patch. So 4 cards for me, and I declare a green 3. The Leshavult call bluff, but it is a green 3. The shot hits Lubart for 5 damage. But I do not declare another card because Flintlock is happy with the damage he caused. Gwendoline jogs over to the Moonstone and spends 4 energy to use her ability to scry. She draws the top card of the arcane deck, takes a look at it, and can place it beside her character card face down. At any time, Bernd can add the card to his arcane attack or defense hand. Because she is feeble, she would need to spend 2 energy to harvest the stone, so she ends her activation with 1 energy left. The Baron von Fancyhead jogs and takes 2 steps to get near the action. Klaus also jogs and takes steps. Because he has 3 energy, he can do 3 separate step actions. The nice token he can drag along is his protection. When Reagan is with him, he gains protection every round, so the first damage he would suffer is prevented. And that's the end of turn 1. Turn 2. The Commonwealth wins the initiative roll and Eric is the first to activate. With close combat in mind, he uses My Hero on the Baron. With this ability, he can target nobles and soldiers. As we've seen before, Flintlock is just a soldier and gained 1 energy. But when Eric targets a noble, the noble gains 2 energy. So the Baron is ready to swing his sword. Eric jogs closer to the Moonstone and spends his last energy to harvest the stone from 3 to 2. Gwendoline spends 3 energy to use her Rejuvenate on Lubart. She can draw 5 cards and declares a red 2, but puts down a red 1. I let that happen and Lubart heals for 3 and is moved 2 inches and closer to the wooded patch, because Reagan can give models energy when they are near a tree or wooded patch. Gwendoline spends her last 2 energy to harvest for 1 and jogs back to get out of the reach of the Baron. Von Fancyhead sees the half-naked giant cultist in front of him and jogs in to attack and teach him some lessons in fashion. Lubart spends 1 energy to do a reaction step. Every time a model in Moonstone takes any action, the opponent can choose one of his models to spend 1 energy to do a reaction step. This move can be used in various ways, and Lubart's signature move has a range of 1 inch, so he steps closer to the Baron. And the Baron spends 1 energy to attack. He has a melee of 5. Eric, with his Squire ability, hands out +2 to every noble within 4 inches. And the Baron is the attacker, that's another +2. So the Baron can draw 9 cards out of the combat deck. The combat deck contains cards of 6 different combat moves, 3 of each type, so 18 in total. There is Fallen Swing, Thrust, Rising Attack, High Guard, Sweeping Cut, and Low Guard. Lubart has a melee of 3 and can draw 3 cards. After seeing the cards, the attacker can decide to spend 1 energy to go for it to draw 2 extra cards. Fancyhead is happy with his, but Lubart spends 1 energy to draw more. Because Lubart is a predictable combatant, he has to show his cards to Fancyhead, who happily acknowledges that there is no sweeping cut. The combat move Lubart needs to do his signature move. Now both choose their combat card in secret, and Lubart chooses a High Guard because the signature move of Fancyhead is on a Fallen Swing. But Fancyhead knows that everyone expects his Fallen Swing, so he chooses a Rising Attack, the exact opposite. The guard deals no damage to Fancyhead, and the Rising Attack would deal 2 against a High Guard, but the Baron has 2 more and can do a critical hit, adding the other 2 Rising Attacks for a total of 6 damage. He can declare slicing damage to deal +1 because of his longsword for a total of 7 damage on Lubart. The Baron spends another energy to attack again. He draws 9 cards and Lubart 3. And Lubart finds a sweeping cut. The Baron chooses a Fallen Swing and Lubart the sweeping cut. Lubart can upgrade to his signature move, Entangle, and would deal 4 damage to the Baron, but he wears plate armor to reduce any non-magical damage by 2. So 2 damage for the Baron. But because the Baron is within 1 inch, Lubart can use his end step effect on the Baron for 2 wounds, a loss of 2 energy and -2 melee stat until the end of the turn. The Baron can upgrade the Fallen Swing into his signature move, the Master Strike, to deal 3 damage and can do a follow-up attack against a sweeping cut, indicated by a damage number in a yellow circle, choosing another card from his hand to deal even more damage. He can choose a rising attack to deal 3 more, and Lubot is slain. Klaus jogs to revenge his giant cultist friend and spends 1 energy to attack. He has a melee stat of 3, but because of his ability Act On, he can increase his stat by +1 for each other cultist within 6 inches. Reagan and Gwendoline are also cultists, so he gains +2, and another +2 because he initiated the attack. 7 cards for Klaus and 5 for the Baron. The Baron plays a high guard and Klaus a rising attack. Klaus can add another rising attack for 6 damage, reduced by 2 because of the plate armor, but that's enough, and the Baron is slain. With the Baron in the dirt, Klaus harvests for 2 and ends his turn. Flintlock carries a Moonstone and therefore gains slow, reducing his jog to 2 inches. But that's enough to get in base contact with the Moonstone. He then spends 2 energy to harvest the stone and picks it up, and ends his turn with 1 energy left. Reagan jogs in base contact with the Moonstone and harvests for 1 to pick it up. She then spends 2 energy to use Verdant Growth and declares a green 3. The humans let it through, and another wooded patch appears on the board. Friar Flavius jogs and steps 3 times because there is no Baron to heal and no other human who can fight. And we let Flintlock do a delayed reaction step to one of Reagan's actions because the humans want to get closer to the action. Turn 3. The Commonwealth wins the initiative again, and Eric jogs with tears in his eyes to get revenge for his beloved Baron. Steps twice and attacks Klaus. He can draw 5 cards and Klaus gets 4 because Friar Flavius is also engaging him. Eric chooses a fallen swing and Klaus a sweeping cut. Eric would deal 3 damage, but the protection prevents that. Klaus has to upgrade into his signature move, Flail Around Madly. On one hand, because it sounds totally awesome to flail around like a mad fawn he is, and on the other hand, he can just do impact damage, and the sweeping cut is slicing. He can do +2 impact damage for a total of 4 damage against Eric and 1 damage to himself because of his end step effect. Reagan jogs for 2 to get outside of the divine intervention range of Flavius and spends 3 energy to use her Malachite ritual. And as we see, there are effects on any color. So she is looking for greens to give Klaus even more energy. She adds the card that Gwendoline scried earlier and declares a green 2. And Klaus gains 2 energy. Friar spends 1 energy to attack Klaus. He can draw 6 and Klaus 4. Both play a fallen swing. Friar deals +1 damage for impact, so 1 damage on Klaus, but 0 damage for Friar because he has natural padding and reduces impact damage by 2. Another attack, Friar plays a sweeping cut and claws a falling swing. In the heat of battle, Friar forgot that he confuses the damage types and deals 3 to Klaus. Klaus can critical hit his fallen swing to deal 6 on Flavius, but Friar is spiteful and can restore 1 wound after dealing 1 or more damage. Last attack, Friar plays a sweeping cut and claws a fallen swing again. This time Friar remembers to upgrade in his signature move Spank and can do a critical hit with another card and deals 1 damage to Klaus. Klaus' fallen swing would deal 3 against a sweeping cut, but the critical hit also multiplies the end step effects on signature moves. Friar heals 2 for Spank and 1 for Spiteful. Gwendoline jogs over to the Moonstone and spends 2 energy to pick it up. Then she uses Rejuvenate on Claws and declares a red 3. The Commonwealth calls okay, and Klaus heals 4 wounds and is moved 3 inches. Flintlock jogs, spends 2 energy to reload and shoots his musket against Klaus. The Wooded Patch and Flavius are within 1 inch and can be ignored, but Eric is in the way and Klaus gains light cover. Flintlock can draw just 2 cards and declares a green 1. The Leshavult call bluff and the blue 1 is revealed, but there is no catastrophe card in the defense hand. The shot misses and no other bad things happen. Klaus attacks Eric, can draw 7 cards and Eric 3. He can play 2 fallen swings and Eric a sweeping cut. Eric cannot do any damage because Klaus is not within his melee range, and with 2 fallen swings, Eric suffers 8 damage and is slain. Klaus jogs and attacks Friar. He can play 2 rising attacks and Friar a sweeping cut. Friar suffers 4 and is slain because he cannot heal if the damage in beforehand is enough to slay him. Klaus can step once and spends his last 2 energy to pick up the stone. At this point, Flintlock lays down his musket and the 2 Moonstones to retreat because there is no way he will survive the fight. And so the Leshavult win and can happily sell the Moonstones to the wizards at the Tower of Grommel. That was our first game here, and wow, that went fast. There was no reason to play out turn 4. As you could see, Moonstone is a fast-paced game with deadly combat. Even if you could attack, you never know how much damage you will get in return. Even if your opponent has to show you their cards. Looking at you, Lubart. I really enjoy the I know that you know that I know that you know game. Quite daunting at first, but you get the hang of it very quickly. But most of all, the whimsical charm of this game sells it to me. I adore all the fun little interactions between the models and the players during the game. And I love to see a different little story unfold every time I play. And even if it's not going my way, it's always a good laugh and so fast-paced, I want to play the next game as soon as possible. What do you think about Moonstone? Have you played it before or is it new to you? Let me know in the comments down below. I will paint up some minis, edit some more footage and hope to see you soon for another battle report out of the breach.